Think about all the failures from this one guy, right?
Yeah.
You throw the bomb, it bounces, you blow up the other car, so you failed. You eat the cyanide pill and jump in the river. I'm going to die, right? Like, sweet release. You get into the river, and you just are puking and shitting yourself and get pulled along a smelly river, and then somebody grabs you up and they beat the shit out of you and put you in jail for the rest of your life. And you probably get, I'm assuming death.
I can't remember. He might have been one of the guys that was too young to be hung, but he would have spent like the next 25 years in prison or something like that.
But just all those L's at once, bro.
At one time, bro.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this. And totally redeem yourself.
Okay, so I'm personally very, very excited to do this episode. This is an episode that I've wanted to do personally for a long time, specifically so I could talk about this story, because this story is like, the story's kind of interesting, but it's the conspiracy behind the story that's got all the sauce for me, because it's so just like juicy, just because I like it. And it deals with time travel. I'm not going to reveal exactly what the conspiracy is, but it deals with time travel. So, you may or may not know the actions that took place that caused the start of World War I, which was actually the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand of the Austro-Hungary Empire back in the day, in the
this
early
was
1900s.
the thread. This was the thread that not just World War One. Like you can actually probably say that like this is the cause of World War II as well. Like this got the ball rolling.
Well,
you know
I mean, yeah. If World War I didn't play out the way that it did,
you would have never
and
had
then
World War II.
World War II,
effect.
it's like a butterfly effect, exactly.
Butterfly effect move.
And you know,
but you could trace it back to.
But you can trace it back. I mean, you can trace this thing all the way back to a simple, what could be a simple miscommunication between two people that led to this actually happening. Like if you believe that this event, which a lot of people do, like a lot of historians believe, like this is what kicked it off, because right after this, what was it? Not Bulgaria. Bosnia. Was it Bosnia? Well, two of the like Balkan states that what we now consider like the Balkans, like they go to war with each other, and then through the Allies and everything, that's how World War I starts. So it's actually not even from superpowers at the time. I mean, Austria-Hungary was kind of a superpower at the time, but either way, it comes down to this. It comes down to a wrong right turn, really. You're just driving and you make one wrong right turn, and then next thing you know, World War I happens.
He's like, it wasn't really the super states. It was some small country like Ukraine or something.
Yeah, it was kind of like Ukraine.
You know what I mean? Like it's all like it's a small.
I mean, it's that same area, like
it's like Belarus.
You know,
nothing crazy.
Eastern European countries.
It wasn't like world superpower. It's just like there was this little thing that started. Anyways, real quick question before we go further. I just wanted to know, like, do you guys know where an archduke is in the hierarchy of power, I guess?
He's just like, I don't know exactly how high up that
Secretary of
State. I don't
State
know, like, why don't you just look up like how, like, what is an archduke or something like that? Because there's a king obviously that he like answers to, and the king like appoints you the duke of an area.
He's a son of the Emperor of Austria.
Oh, there you go.
So
he's the
like
son of the
prince.
emperor. Yeah, he's like a prince basically. So he's the prince.
Yeah, a sovereign prince.
Although I will say that from reading the Wikipedia page, and I'm just bringing the Wikipedia page because I didn't want to bring like all the weird, mostly just because I would have brought it if I could find it again, but I learned about this conspiracy theory like many years ago. But so essentially what happens is, just to give like a quick synopsis, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, he is told by the Emperor of Austria to go oversee some like military operations or whatever. And in the course of doing this, he's going to do this like parade, like motorcade. And there's these Bosnia-Herzegovina, like
separatists?
Revolutionaries. Yeah, because Bosnia and Herzegovina are territories of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at this time.
Okay.
And there's some people in that they're all super young, like 19 to 22 year old dudes, like 17-year-olds and stuff, like in high school age basically. high school, fresh into college, and
just running shit.
Yeah, they come up with this plot to assassinate him through, and I'll get into it. There's some like weird, like funny business in the plot, and you know, it goes wrong basically, and they totally fail, and then the Archduke's convoy takes a wrong turn because of, you know, like I said, a miscommunication, and lo and behold, he turns down a street that one of the assassins happens to be walking down as he's like, you know, going away from the area of the assassination because it's over. But he just, there's the Archduke, and he just jumps out the bushes and he just fucking shoots him and his wife in the car. And this assassination is what pushes these two countries over into war, and then all the allies join in afterwards.
So wait, hold on. You gotta rewind the synopsis, especially for the viewers, because I have heard this story, but like they were gonna assassinate him. Like
they're trying to assassinate.
And he's doing this parade that you were mentioning.
Right, it's like a motorcade.
And these other separatist guys are like, "Yo, we're gonna kill the prince," essentially when he's going through. But they miss him, or like how did? Like,
yeah, so there's multiple people. The plan is like there's multiple people set up along the route over the course of a few blocks. And here, if you click on this map, actually, this is a really good explanation. So if you start here on the left, they're traveling in a motorcade of like 6 cars to the town hall where he's going to give a little speech. And they just left like an inspection at some barracks or something like that. And what happens is this dude right here, Nedjeko Kabrinovich, I'm totally screwing that up, I'm sure. Sorry. He throws a bomb. So first, on the way to number 2, like 3 people don't throw their bombs. They have bombs. They have firearms. They don't do anything. They just let him drive by. Yeah, they just let him drive by. Well, you know, it's not really clear why, because I don't know if those people in particular got caught, but
they bitched out.
They basically bitched out. Yeah,
I saw cops, man. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, like for whatever reason, a couple of people on the way to Kabrinovich, they bitch out. But then he comes up and he throws his bomb, but his bomb bounces off the cloth roof of the convertible, and it bounces off and it lands underneath the car behind the Duke, and it blows that car up, and that car gets blown up, and then the Archduke's car and the 3 cars, like the 3 cars in front of the car that get blown up, they speed away.
Had a tail out of there.
So, and this dude, the Kabrinovich guy, he takes a cyanide pill that like one of the main dudes gives him, like gives everybody. He takes a cyanide pill and he jumps in this river right here, this Miljaka
so he
river.
fucks it up and then just kills himself.
So yeah, he totally fucks it up, tries to kill himself, but the cyanide was like not effective or something. It just doesn't work, and it just makes him vomit.
Sauce.
Yeah, it just makes him vomit, and then I found out that he's like gets pulled out of the river by like the cops or the crowd or whatever, and just gets beaten senseless before getting taken into custody.
That sucks.
And he's all fucked up on like a weak poisoning of cyanide and shit.
I'm trying to imagine these guys in like real time.
Think about all the failures from this one guy, right?
Yeah.
You throw the bomb, it bounces, you blow up the other car, so you failed. You eat the cyanide pill and jump in the river. I'm going to die, right? Like sweet release. You get into the river and you just are puking and shitting yourself and get pulled along a smelly river. And then somebody grabs you up and they beat the shit out of you and put you in jail for the rest of your life. And you probably get, I'm assuming death penalty.
I can't remember. He might have been one of the guys that was too young to be hung, but he would have spent like the next 25 years in prison or something like that.
But just all those L's at once, bro.
At one time, bro. And I also couldn't help, like, this is some of that shit that I think about often about how society is now today compared to then. I'm like, dude, back in what year is this?
This is in 1914.
This is even in the early 1900s.
Yeah, they're driving around in cars.
17-year-olds are plotting the assassination of princes, and I'm over here. They're like, "You better not smoke weed in high school, bitch." And I'm like,
I'm doing good. Chill out.
You know what I mean? Like, we could be doing a lot worse for ourselves out here as like young adults these days. You know?
I mean, look at what the media is serving you. Anybody know about Euphoria? I don't watch it.
Yeah.
I don't watch it, but trust me, I know about it.
My kid be watching it,
and it's like look at what high school girls do. Jesus, man.
Yeah. But anyways, people just sometimes don't be given enough credit to like 16, 17-year-old. You know, they're like they're still kids, and they are
plot
still
assassinations.
Kids. But you know what I mean? They're out here trying to like change the course of history at 17. So it's like you could do a lot at that age. You know?
Yeah. And the majority of them were that age.
The school shooters of their time.
Exactly.
Yeah, true.
They like
That's
the
true.
If the school shooters shot the president or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
or like
They
the
went for the
president's
Princeton-
daughter.
yeah.
Yeah. And you could tell it was just like you said, it was definitely like one homie who was like leading that charge, and he's like, "Come on, all you little ragtag group of homies, like we're gonna
It's actually,
bully
it's a
the
whole, like, it's a connection between two relatively larger organizations that come together with individual sects within it's like a very clandestine. There's people from the actual military of Bosnia Herzegovina that are part of this, like majors and lieutenants and shit that are part of this. The major dude is the guy, I can't remember his name, Major Tarkonsky or something like that. He's the guy that gives everybody the weapons, the grenades. He trains them. He gives them the cyanide pills that don't end up working. And like he, you know, like he's like, it's a vast plan.
Yeah,
like the plot, as a matter of fact, just to like save some time, I didn't want to read through the whole plot. Obviously, you can read the Wikipedia. We'll have it in the description. But just some small parts to like, I'm going to rewind a little bit before the event actually happens. Because like there's so much interesting stuff that goes on with these guys that's just so weird and fishy that kind of lends to the conspiracy that I'm going to reveal later on. More foreshadowing. So on the 17th of June, which is about a week or so before this, maybe 10 days, one of the guys travels to this town called Broad. I'm not sure how to say it. It's just B-R-O-D, Brood. And when he's questioned at trial, the guy Illich, who's one of the head guys of the organization called the Black Hand, I can't remember what they call it in Bosnian. I don't even know what language it was, but either way, he's like one of the head guys of this revolutionary group. And he says that his explanation for going to this town, like literally like 10 days before they do this thing, which was totally not planned, was because first he said that he was going there to prevent the assassination from happening. And they were like, okay, in what way? Because the assassination is supposed to be happening where you were at. And then he's like, well, actually, I came back from Brood to prevent the assassination. And they were like, what are you talking about? Like, he just gave these ridiculous arguments. Like, he just couldn't explain why he went to this town. But apparently, what's like widely, I guess, believed, but can't be proved, is that this guy, this historian from like the 1940s, he basically says that the thesis is that Illich, the guy who I'm talking about, he goes to Brood to meet some emissary of this other guy named Apis. And this guy's name is Sarach. I'm fucking these names up.
Yeah,
and
you're losing me in the name. So
basically, he goes there because he gets in special instructions that only he receives to cancel the assassination. Like the heads up decide later in wherever their headquarters are at, like, actually, we're not going to have these dudes do the thing, but they're already in the town with the weapons, like getting ready.
Is this why these three dudes don't throw their bomb? You know,
I don't know. So like you could see how like they were like, well, this may or may not be happening, or you know. So it's
waffling.
like
You can't waffle.
it's
in
all
an
waffly. So
assassination
yeah,
plot.
like he goes to this town. They're telling him, okay, you need to go back and tell them that it's not happening. But then somebody else comes back from the other place, and he's like, oh no, it actually is happening. Like a few days before they're supposed to do it, and so it's all this like tomfuckery, like just in the 1 week before you're supposed to assassinate this prince dude.
I've studied terrorism, and this is not how you do it.
This is not good terrorism. Yeah, it's not good.
This is really wishy-washy terrorism.
Terrorism.
It's wishy-washy.
Like once you deploy your deep agents into the field, there can't be any like questioning the plot. You know what I mean? The plot's got to already be well.
Yep. And so get this. This is also funny. So the Kabrinovich guy, the guy who gets beaten up after failing
Cyanide pill guy,
with the terrible bomb throw.
Yeah.
So the way that they find out what day the Archduke is going to arrive in this town in Austria is because they bump into that Kabrinovich guy's father just randomly, who happens to be like a police detective or something like that. Randomly. And I'm like, what? Randomly? Like, who's calling this random? Are you sure? Like,
Sounds like
there's
part of
guys
the
in the
plot.
military that are part of the plot. So how is it that these dudes that aren't in the police aren't part of the plot? And he basically gives him all the info on like when the Duke's going to get there, because the police force of the Sarajevo, that's the town Sarajevo, they're the guys that are like, supposed to protect everything, which is important because on the day that this all happens, they have like terrible fucking security at this place.
Oh, wait.
There's like 6 different assassins set up along this road that like they all that nobody knows about, and they
let this dude still go to this town hall thing for the whole reception.
He goes to the town hall.
Like what?
Like he almost gets blown up and then arrives at the town hall and gives his speech. And like,
can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. Like if they failed the assassination of John F. Kennedy and then he just like went on about his day, like that.
Yeah, just spoke again up there. Like, listen, they missed me.
It doesn't make any sense. Like you're taking him like immediately to the bunker.
Yeah, and actually, the Archduke is super pissed. Actually, he goes.
I mean, yeah.
Well, he cuts off like some guys like giving him an intro before he steps up there to talk, and he like cuts them off, and he's like, "I come to your city and I'm welcomed by bombs. This is ridiculous." And like in the middle of him giving this speech to all these people, and his wife stands up and like whispers in his ear, and he's just kind of quiet for a second, and then he's like, "Now you may speak." And he sits back down, and she had to calm his ass down.
Yeah, she's like, "Babe, you're on one." He's like, "All right." But they try to kill me, goddamn.
Well, yeah, and because, this is the son of a man who just controls your country just, arbitrarily, just because he said that he conquered it. He came in there and just stole your country, basically. And so, like, the son is coming to, like, inspect your town and give a speech, and you try to kill him, and now he's like has to hold his tongue because if he lashes out against the people there in the crowd or whatever, you could see how it could, it could lead to like bad tensions.
They're like, "Oh, we are trying to kill this guy. Oh, fine.
Oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, you know what? I kind of wish they would have blown this motherfucker up now because you're saying a lot of fuck shit."
And it's interesting that he reacted like that too, because like I haven't read the last blurb here, but the one that's the Sarajevo town hall one. After attending the reception, he gets back into the car and visits the people wounded in the earlier attack. Like that's some Princess Di shit. Yeah. Like he
goes
literally.
To the hospital.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. Yep. That's crazy.
Like
not only did you survive the assassination attempt and give your speech, which it sounds like he was kind of pissed at the crowd.
Yep.
But then you're gonna go do the humanitarian thing of like visiting the wounded.
Yeah.
Like
and he's already angry, and I mean, it doesn't say in the Wikipedia, but I'm pretty sure that was Sophie's idea, his wife, for sure. She was like, we should, instead of going to whatever the thing that they were gonna go to, they were like, we should go to the hospital.
Yeah, because she's obviously the one that's trying to like help him like gain graciousness.
And such an interesting thing because of like this woman, his wife's background. I read that it was like she can only accompany him if he's doing something in a military capacity. Like if he's just out doing regular like government duties or whatever, she can't be with him and shit like that. So this is like a special occasion for them. That's the only reason she's there. And the guy who ends up actually shooting them said at trial later he wasn't trying to shoot his wife. He was trying to shoot this other dude who he was totally trying to kill earlier on some other separate plot. But he was like, "Hey, both of these guys are here. I'll shoot them both." But then he accidentally shoots his wife.
Wait. Yeah, let's finish this because my man's dodges the bomb, but he doesn't live through this.
No, he doesn't live through the rest of this day.
Yeah, so like...
So he dodges the bomb, and he's like on his way to the hospital or whatever. And what happens is one of the main security detail guys, AIDS, gets injured in the bombing. And so he's in the hospital, and he doesn't relay the message to the other guys that they're not changing or that the route has been changed or whatever. So instead of staying on the street that they were on, they were just going to go to the town hall and then come right back down that same street. Well, instead of doing that, one of them takes a left down one of those bridges to cross over the river. And then the second one and then the Archduke's car, they just follow behind him because they're like, "Oh, we're turning." Yeah, and because nobody got this message that we're not turning down this bridge. Well, this kid named Princip, I can't remember his first name, but his last name's Princip. He is like I said, he's not really like fleeing the area per se, but he's kind of, I don't know. It's like hard to say what he's doing. He's just like moseying around in this area that's not really part of where he's supposed to be because the motorcade's now changed course.
Is this one of the guys that like didn't throw their bomb?
No, this is a different guy. So this is a guy that was further up along the road that got sped by on the way to the town hall.
Okay.
So they
It
didn't
said-
get a chance to throw the bombs.
Yeah, it says here that he thought about a position to assassinate him on the return journey. So he went to this delicatessen and was like,
He's like
if
hanging
this
out in
guy
front of this
comes
deli.
back,
Yeah.
I'm gonna fucking kill
Yeah,
this guy.
I'm gonna finish the
And
job.
then the car comes back, and right in front of his delicatessen, they're like, well, we're not going to take this turn because we don't think this is the right route. And the car stops
Yeah.
right in front of
Yeah,
him.
so the dude that I was talking about, one of the head security details, like as soon as they turn onto that bridge, he's like, yo, stop. And he tells the driver of the car with the Duke in
Oh
it to
my
stop.
God.
So they stop, and they stop right in front of the deli where the dude's just chilling with the gun waiting. And he's
Oh
like,
my
as soon as this motherfucker comes back, I'm going to cap him. And then he's like, "Burp," here he is.
Yep.
Oh my
Pow,
god.
pow. and
Steps right up to him.
And he shoots him. And
a
I'm like,
point blank.
in front of this deli that nobody's at, nobody's supposed to be at. It's not part of the plan. You're just at. How do you know that they're going to be at this deli?
He didn't.
Well,
That's crazy.
he didn't, but did he?
Right.
So this is where the conspiracy comes
Right.
in.
'Cause this
the
is very
conspiracy
fortuitous.
is
It
that
is.
this man Princip is not, in fact, some kid from early 1900s, but a man from the future that goes back in time to complete the failed assassination of the Archduke. Because if the Archduke doesn't turn down that bridge, or if there's nobody there to kill him, the Archduke would turn down that bridge
It's
and
like
just
the
drive away.
Adjustment Bureau.
It's exactly
It's
like
the
that. It's like the Adjustment Bureau. Like the dude in the
Bureau,
fedoras come through the doors
And, like,
and they
fix-
fix your shit so that you don't wind up with the girl you love, type shit.
Like to make sure that history goes down the way it's supposed to go
Yep.
down. Like
So that
I do not like to go here. I'm gonna start this by saying like I don't like to go here. I try my best to stay in a realm of like believable
Reality.
conspiracies,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm not the like just that guy. I just don't take it to that rabbit hole place. But like I kind of want to go there with this.
Yeah.
Like, it's just in that
A lot
level
of
of
this doesn't make
coincidence that's just
sense.
hard to rationalize. As just like it was an accident.
I think that's what's going to be the theme today
Mm.
is that all of these stories have an interesting underlying conspiracy layer.
Yeah.
Because I love this time travel angle, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a hook because it's already this insanely complicated, intricate assassination plot that
Yep.
goes to shit. But then at the end, the guy literally just steps onto the footboard of the car and goes bang, bang.
Yep.
Yeah.
he literally just
Right.
walks 10 feet up to the car,
Right.
like
Yeah.
4 steps, and just pow pow.
And I know what's coming with our stories, and they've got conspiracy baked under layers.
Yeah.
And I really dig like how you set that up. I'm gonna set mine up the same way. I'm gonna set mine up the same way.
It's really tricky though. It's just really because, like you said, he wasn't supposed to even be there.
Nobody
Like,
was
and that-
supposed to be
It's
there.
almost like my man's. It's almost like my. You know what I mean? It's like you're about to do something and it fucked up, and you're like eating a sandwich at the like having lunch. Like, where did we go wrong, man? I can't.
It's just eating
believe
your
it.
Subway. Man, I could have
fuck
killed
it,
him.
I could have. We should have done. And you look up and there he is.
Yeah.
You know, and you're
He
just
just
like,
stops dead in the middle of the
"Oh,
street in
shit."
front of you.
Like, I got my gun on me right now. Like,
Oh,
I could
right here.
You know what? I'm just step out and cap this fool. Like, it's just too coincidental
Yeah.
to like really make any sense.
And that's the thing is like
time.
if like it said that in the Wikipedia that he's like, oh, I'm gonna plot to kill him on the return route, but that wasn't the return
wasn't
route.
even the return route.
So what are you talking about? You weren't even where you should have been if
Right.
that was your plan. Like the
Right.
return route would have been on the main street where you all were already set up, but the shit was blown because you tried to blow him up and it didn't work. So now there's cops everywhere and shit like that.
Yeah, it would not make sense to go back because this is on the same street where a bomb just blew up and the guy almost died. So it doesn't make any sense that he would come back down this street. It's like there's just you just don't. Why would you? Why would you go back down the assassination route attempt
and they
area?
were going to though.
But that was the plan
they
though.
were going to.
That was the
Yeah.
plan.
Crazy.
And then he didn't.
Or
because like,
it was
for-
hard to tell. I can't remember if he changed the plan, like if the plan was to
Right.
turn down that road and he changed
Changed
it,
it.
or because maybe turning down that road wouldn't have taken them to the hospital or whatever. But for whatever reason, they didn't get the message to not turn down that road.
Yeah. And this is huge because, like you said, it's not just like a random guy. Like this changes the whole course of history. you
This
know?
is a great
Like,
starting
if
domino
it
for the
had
Great
to-
Wars.
right? Like if it's almost something that had to happen in real time, and like in the world to like have that timeline play out in the way that it has. And so it's just that's makes it even weirder. You know, like I get what people are saying. Like, and then what's this idea? If you know about this dude who like he was supposed to kill somebody else too, though. Like he was working on multiple assassinations at one time.
So the police, I can't remember if
think
you
it was a
go,
governor, yeah.
His name, yeah, the governor or something like that. His name was Piotrek or something. Anyways, this Princip guy had been planning to kill that Piotrek guy before they came up with the plan to kill Franz Ferdinand. And I guess something had gone down like in the planning of the original killing of the Piotrek guy that they were like, oh, we're going to hold off. But then they got the word that the Archduke was coming down, and they were like, that's even better.
Yeah.
So we're not even going to worry about that dude.
But he
then
thought that dude was in his...
He was in that motorcade. That dude, the governor was in the motorcade with him, and that's, according to Princip at trial, he said that he wanted to kill the governor and not the Archduke's wife.
It's making more sense now. It's just like kind of like we did when we had like we're fighting terrorism, when we had like the ace of spades, and like we had like a hierarchy of like most valuable targets, and like we wanted Osama, but like if we caught him with his generals or something, like we were looking for them too, you know.
Yeah,
so
like, we were gonna get the whole squad.
Yeah, we wanted everybody, and so this is the situation where they're looking and they're like, okay, you know, here's our chance to get Podiorik, and then like it's like comes down, it's like, yo, Archduke gonna be with him. You're like, oh shit, okay, now we want Archduke.
Yeah.
If we get the governor, cool. But like our goal is to hit, and then now this my man's has been in these little meetings. He's like, oh, both of them, pow, 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 and then he ends up. Just
and it's
like,
crazy because like these organizations that they're with, like I said, one of them's called like the Black Hand. Another one was like the Nobrando. It's all Slavic languages, so I'm sorry, I don't speak Slav. But anyways, they end up becoming like those organizations become super influential after the war when all of those states get broken up from those old empires and they become Yugoslavia, because Yugoslavia means the Southern Slavs. And so like that whole region became the country of Yugoslavia, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it is.
And that's where a lot of these assassins came from. For like a lot of the people in the plot came from that region.
Yeah, it's super, super weird. And then, so what happens after this? You know, like in the timeline of like you said, the Archduke, he dies, and then
so yeah, basically
from there
the Austria and Hungary, yeah, they're super pissed and they declare war on Bosnia Herzegovina, I'm pretty sure. And then through whatever sort of political contracts that they had or whatever, like
people start jumping in.
I'm not entirely sure how, like I've always just heard the story that this event precipitated World War I, but I don't know exactly what the geopolitical timeline was after this to like the actual start of everybody getting in on it. Because it just started with the Austria-Hungary Empire and Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't, it was like a war, but it wasn't a war because it was like a civil war almost, you know, because that was like a territory of it, from my understanding. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it was like a internal war type.
This whole area, you know, is like just extremely complicated all the way. It's like just like the Middle East. It's like Europe's Middle East.
I just cannot get over how much this seems like a Ukraine-Russia type situation.
Serbia, that's what it was. It was all the Serbs.
Serbia.
Yeah.
And like you see, they're just like, this is Crimea type shit. You know what I mean? Like it's just like a little.
And look,
like,
Sarajevo is just like Kiev. Like
that
little
it's
town,
like town
in it,
on the border type shit, and it's just like,
it's not good.
Damn, that is kind of scary. And then this is true. We just came off the Balkan Wars too, so they'd already been at it a lot. And then like they're like, oh, y'all motherfuckers want more? Like I got you.
You kill my Archduke?
Yeah, like we're coming for you. And then it plays out in everybody else starts picking their sides.
To play into the current news conspiracy even more, the United States, the White House specifically warned of a false flag committed by Russia in the Ukraine that would give them a pretense for war. And there was calls for the White House to release that information to both like Ukraine and to the public. I don't know what came of those calls for that, but it was reported on that they had intelligence pointing towards a false flag. So now you look back and you say, well, you know, maybe Austria, Hungary, maybe these people wanted to go to, maybe it was fortuitous for them to have their guy killed, you know, and it would explain a lot of the setup.
Like it would give them justification.
I didn't even think about that, because like a layer that I read in the article that I didn't really touch on much was that the reason why that dude's wife, why the Archduke's wife couldn't be with him was because of her bloodline or something like that. Like she was just like, I guess the emperor didn't approve of their relationship or whatever. And so he said he only agreed to marry them as long as they agreed to never have any of their children or their children's children like rise to the throne. So like your bloodline or whatever is now going to be cut off
No,
from the throne and from the royalty, everything. So the idea that maybe the emperor was like, yo, in real talk, I'd really just like to get rid of the whole package, him and the girl, because now they're just dead weight. I don't need them around. They're not going to be an heir. So
true, though.
You could just axe them off. And you could use this as an excuse to take over Serbia, which you wanted to do anyways. So
and like it would kind of explain the sloppy communication between the people and like, you know what I mean? Like if you're the Austrian like state, you know, it'd be hard to have open discourse with like the Serbian.
Well, it's interesting.
Muck.
It has interesting parallels to like the January 6th thing with the whole Nancy Pelosi and like. The Republicans wanted to ask her, like, well, why didn't you have more security? Like, we kept requesting more security, and you didn't. There's barely any there.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, she dodged that pretty well. I don't remember exactly what she said. You know, there's some interesting parallels there because the security detail along this parade route or this motorcade route was severely lacking. I think they said they had, like, 60 officers there for, you know, and this is, like, spanning multiple city blocks of a industrializing city, and you know, like they're driving cars down it, so there's paved roads, there's probably hundreds of people there,
and no security,
and 60 police officers, and so like you can see some like very interesting. I mean, obviously it's just like John says all the time, you know, history doesn't repeat it, but it rhymes.
Yep.
Because you know, humans are we're dumb and we make the same mistakes over and over again. Or one dude was a super genius, and he went back in time and, you know, fixed whatever happened.
I mean, because, you know, Bernstein Bears.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's definitely not the first time I felt like people was out here fixing things.
Right. And I wasn't sure, like, I'll just save it. I'll just save it for the next one.
Yeah, for the next time.
Because I was about to reveal another story that I was like debating on going with over this one, which is very similar, sort of to the Bernstein Bears idea, but I'll say keep it in the pocket.
It's true. It's just as hard to rationalize
layers of coincidences.
Yeah, like there's just like you know, like anytime. It's just I've never really liked that explanation of things. Like I don't, you know. It's kind of
a coincidence.
Yeah, you know, like that's kind of like with the birth of the universe type thing. People are like, it just happened. I'm like, all this just accidentally happened.
It's all a coincidence.
Guys. You know what I mean? Like that's always tough for me to like rationalize. And so it's like when I see this extreme level of coincidence here, definitely feel like some
suspicious
fishy shit's going on that I'll never be able to prove. It's fucking sucks.
Yeah, no, and I mean, just to be fair, I have no like, there's no direct evidence whatsoever to the validity of the Princip guy being from a different time. I mean, even like that's not even a way like you could travel back in time and just convince some kid in 1914 to do it for you and just put him like, hey, I know he's gonna be here at this deli. So I mean, like I obviously don't think that that's what happened, but it's an interesting explanation as to how all of that ended up the way that it did.
Because he also he tried to kill himself right after this. So he popped them, and then he was about to pop himself, and everybody like bum rushed him and grabbed him and stopped him from being able to do that. So it's almost like, I don't know. That's weird, you know? Yeah. It was definitely a murder-suicide type plot, you know, because like they gave cyanide pills and everything. This is like terrorism in 1915, obviously. It's like
it's super terrorism. Like they called them outrages. That's the term that they used to just like when they said like we were going to commit an outrage.
Yeah, that was
and
like
that was like the act, if you will.
Which is weird because that's exactly what it does. You know?
Yeah,
I can't help but draw the parallel to the old Bush Osama bin Laden type shit too. You know, like when you were saying too about like I've never been able to shake that kind of conspiracy angle of like were Bush and Osama like working together type thing. You know, like was he like, hey, I need you to. I'd be thinking that a lot. I was thinking the same thing with the whole Trump-Putin connection. Like, sometimes I'd be feeling like these presidents, like you said, do like a false flag or they set up some type of event so that they can justify their agendas that they have in the world. And so it's just like hard for me. I kind of do see that angle where the Austrian emperor might have just sacrificed his own son so he could take over Serbia.
And it's because real life events happen and then are exposed that we start thinking that all of these events could in some way. Like there's a layer of fabrication that could exist. Maybe not for everything, but like when you start learning about like the CIA plot with Government Whitmer, where the FBI or whatever convinces a whole bunch of guys that are like, they're all FBI agents.
Well, it's actually just
like,
this is one guy really
yeah,
that
well,
they convinced.
Like they got one like main guy, but there was some peripherals too. But the whole idea is that they create the terrorist plot and see if they can get you to buy in.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's like
scheming.
We already know that the chiefs of staff brought Kennedy some sheets of paper that were like, let's do a fake terrorist attack.
Right.
Like, so these are things that like when we see them happen with this, you have to look at that layer, because time has shown us that governments will fake these things.
Yes,
And
that's true.
are you guys ready to move on to the next story?
Yeah, I just want to make one last point.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's
Time
hard
travel.
for me to just believe that those cameras were off in, old boy's cell. Type shit
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
exactly.
His
those
friend
levels-
got hung, right?
Yeah, like a lot of them keep getting murdered or dying mysteriously in prison. And like,
They keep ending up. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that he got hung. They keep ending up hanged.
hang.
Yeah.
Same happened with McAfee. I mean, like, yeah.
Didn't they
it's-
try to come at Ghislaine too or whatever? Like they tried to like
I
something.
don't know.
heard
They
that
probably
there was
got her in
situation
some
with
deep,
her.
dark bunker
There was
somewhere.
some-
Like,
But my point is, like it's already coincidental that my man's died in prison. You think you would have kept him alive, and then the cameras just happen to be turned off too. It's like, come on, man. How much of this bullshit are we supposed to like believe?
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead.
your event led directly into World War I, which steamrolled 20 years later, 30 years later, directly into fucking World War II.
Yeah.
They're intrinsically connected.
Yeah.
Adolf Hitler served in World War I in the army, and so did the guy that I'm going to mention in this story, one of his lieutenants, one of his right-hand men, Rudolf Hess. Now, I want to do a little pre thing here. Okay. We all know that in World War II, the Nazis were into the occult. This is facts. We've made fun of it in pop culture. Go watch Indiana Jones,
Hellboy.
Hellboy, anything like that.
Shit,
Red Skull in
from the Marvel
Yeah.
movies. Yeah, he was a Nazi.
Nazi occult shit. We can kind of all agree at this point because every single streaming network has a show about it.
What? Explain. Catch me up.
Nazi occult symbolism. They did tons of research into different
Like paranormal
like
shit.
paranormal
and
shit.
Like
They
Hitler
were-
was on some other, like, he was on some Science Plus shit.
Oh, okay.
He
Yeah,
was trying
this
to get
is-
and
this
tap
is
into that, like,
Mengele.
Yeah.
gods and, like,
Yeah.
spiritual
Satanic,
power
like,
and shit like
ritual.
that.
not even just that, but like
It's not really
sci-
satanic,
the
just-
science levels as well. of
Yeah,
the
they were like
occult.
scientist cultists. It
Yeah,
was weird.
This was a whole class of people too. Like, I'm gonna link this story to Aleister Crowley, a famous Satanist
You're gonna
from.
link this to Aleister Crowley?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Luciferian kind of Satanist guy from England, who some say was like a MI5 like intelligent agent. But yes, the Nazis were into dark occult shit. They were also into weird like shit with twins, like science-y shit. Like that's
Yeah.
what
I mean, they were trying to create the Ubermensch and all that.
Yeah,
shit,
they were doing
so
a lot
it's
of
like-
weird shit.
they were doing a
weird
lot of
science,
weird genetic, weird science, weird dark occult shit. Okay, that's the pretense here.
Yeah.
This is true.
It's a setup.
Okay, so Rudolf Hess, right? This is when Germany was like attacking Russia, but like also like like they were like also shelling England, but like they were doing all these things, right? But Rudolf Hess, the story goes that he, without Hitler's approval, got into a plane, flew that plane all the way to England, crashed in a farm in Scotland as his gas ran out, and was supposed to meet up with one of the dukes there, one of the dukes of something shire. We're going to pull up the Wikipedia page. And that this duke was somehow favorable to the Nazis and would do some sort of peace deal or some sort of deal where, you know, they would like not attack Hitler, or that they would sign a peace agreement with Britain to fight Russia. Like this was like what Rudolf, they think Rudolf Hess had in his head. This is the plan, right? But this is where it gets all kinds of murky. There's all these conspiracies because nobody really knows why this guy flew up there.
Okay. Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Right.
Okay. He could be flying up there because he's mentally ill and he's hearing voices and he's schizophrenic. He could be flying up there because someone made a deal with him and then they reneged on the deal and now boom, he lands and it's like you're to jail with you. So I'd like to pull up this article here.
Gotcha,
This is about a witness. Okay. So On 10 May 1941, Adolf Hitler's deputy, Rudolf Hess, parachuted into Scotland, landing in a field near Eaglesham. So he was in this plane here. And now, if you were a person from Scotland or England at this time, during the kickoff of World War II, you knew what this plane was because these are planes that are bombing and attacking you. Yeah. And literally on this day, there was a bombing and attacking happening in London, not incredibly far from where this plane crashed in Scotland. Okay, the prominent Nazi, this is Rudolf Hess, had flown solo for 1,000 miles from Bavaria in this Messerschmitt Bf-110 plane, apparently on a peace mission in the days leading up to Germany's invasion of Russia. This is right in a key integral moment
part of this whole shebang.
Of World War II. Yeah. And this is like Hitler's like second, third hand man. Like this is not just a random general.
Yeah.
This is a big deal. Okay. And he was into that occult shit. Okay.
We just remind you about that.
He's like,
because I'm gonna
forget about my setup.
the setup. This shit gets wild. Okay. So this guy jumps out of the plane. Plane crashes in Scotland. He was prominently arrested by a pitchfork-wielding local farmer who took him to the farmhouse and alerted the authorities. Okay, so this guy's out there with his sheep.
Put this man under citizen's arrest.
Put him under citizen arrest. Yeah, this is great.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like you just see, it's kind of like Independence Day when he comes running up on that line. Yeah. He like drags the alien out there and beats the shit out of him and wraps him up in a parachute. And he's like, "Come with me."
And what the hell is that smell? I could have been at a barbecue.
You coming with me?
A few eyewitnesses to Hess's arrival are still alive. John McVicker, 80, has memories of the day when the Nazi leader parachuted into Scotland. He was 10 years old, and he was living near where Hess's plane went down. Mr. McVicker recalled the approach of Hess's plane shortly before it crashed. He told BBC Scotland, "It was a Saturday. It was a very pleasant day, sun and cloud, and as I recall it, my father and I were at the back of the house under a great big chestnut tree, kicking a football about, when we heard the unsynchronized engines of a German plane, and that was unusual during daylight, and it flew right over the chestnut tree." His father said, look at him, but I missed him just as he went past, and then strangely, I've never known the reason, we heard cannon fire. My father shouted, "It's the RAF, they're after the bastard, they're after him," but there was no RAF plane there. So my only explanation is that the plane was armed in some way and Hess was getting rid of the ammunition because obviously he was running out of fuel. The reason Mr. McVicker is able to recall seeing the plane in daylight, although it was late in the evening, is that the clocks were put forward by an extra hour during the war. This meant that it got dark later than normal. On the night Hess flew over, the sun set in the west of Scotland at about a 2215 double summer time, and blackout came into force at about 11 o'clock. And this is said to have happened right around 10, 11 o'clock. Mr. McVicker estimates Hess's plane was flying low between 1,000 and 1,500 feet, which was strange. It was very, very unusual. We can see it wasn't a bomber, and we recognized it was an Me-110. It was recognizable to all of us in these days. So it seemed strange, but we didn't think about it. We just thought the German pilot had got lost. Mr. McVicker said less than an hour later, people started to gather at the Busby headquarters of the Home Guard, now Busby Masonic Lodge, that's weird, because they had heard Hess was being brought there. He continued, I and all the children gathered up there waiting for him to be brought in. I got a bit fed up and went back to the park with my football to practice shooting in.
Yeah, shooting in.
So this little Scotsman, the little 10-year-old kid is out there and sees this whole thing go down, sees this Nazi guy parachute in out of a plane that crashes into the field, okay? They pull him out. Now, he claims when he lands that he's going to have a meeting with one of these Duke guys, okay? So, upon being captured in Scotland, Hess gave a false name and said he had an important message for the Duke of Hamilton, a fellow aviator whom he had never met. Hess mistakenly believed that the Duke was part of an anti-government faction and prominent in opposition to war with Germany. So when he landed, he was like, I have a meeting with someone. Mm-hmm. So he claims when he lands, he's got a meeting with somebody that he's supposed to meet, right? Mm-hmm. And I did not know about the Masonic Lodge thing. That kind of ties in. I didn't even know that anymore.
I'm glad that you hit us with that one because me and Mac were also looking at each other and you were saying that it's daylight outside, but it's also 10 o'clock at night.
This is also very north on the hemisphere of like, this is up in like Scotland. Like
I was actually, I was more confused that this is the first time that I had heard that they just like, we're going to change the clocks by an hour for war.
Yeah.
Like,
it's another concept.
I had never known about that.
I did not know about that
I didn't know
concept.
that they were just like, yo, we're gonna make it dark earlier so that
later,
so that we can fight some more.
Maybe or less, because they were kind of saying that normally planes didn't fly during the day. It was weird.
They bombed them at night.
Yeah, they bomb at night, but you shoot in the day.
That makes sense? Yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right. Like more fighting.
Like
time.
if you wanted to increase your bombing times, then you would take it back an hour.
They said it was 22:15 double summer time, in which clocks are set 2 hours ahead of standard time. Used in Britain during the Second World War. During the Second World War, double summer time was introduced and was used for the period. Oh, okay.
So Britain did this.
Yeah, only Britain did this, and they like you were saying, it's like we already do the clocks ahead 1 hour. They would like double that for some apparent reason. Interesting. So anyways,
Yeah.
okay.
Why? Okay.
Now that makes more sense though, because like
Yep.
on regular daylight saving time, it doesn't really get dark till like 9 or something like that. 9, like sometimes the sun be setting like 9, o'clock.
So I want to make this point here that there's no evidence to suggest that the Duke of Hamilton had sympathy with the Nazi cause or that he was part of the anti-government faction as Hess believed. He belonged to the Conservative Party, was a friend of Winston Churchill, and served his country in the RAF. Douglas Hamilton successfully brought a libel action against 2 communists in 1942 who asserted that he was friends with Hess. This was kind of the major claim at the time, was that Hess thought he was going to get a meeting with this guy. Here's some wreckage of the plane.
See, but
What you got over there?
I'll just, per the logic that we used when we discussed the whole Bill Cosby situation,
Okay.
Like, it's hard for me to put aside any sort of like accusations if there's like a lot of people coming at you with these accusations. You know what I mean?
This guy
like,
landed and was like, I want to talk to the Duke of Hamilton.
I need to talk to the Duke of Hamilton. And then these other 2 communist dudes, and just for the record, communists are not necessarily like friends with Nazis. They're not the same thing. So I don't know why they'd be like standing up or like, I don't see what the communists have to do, but 2 other people associated this man with a Nazi.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't have to worry about that because nobody's like, you can't associate with me Nazis. Like, I don't talk to any Nazis.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, there's no way, and I'm not even in a position that a Nazi would want to talk to me. So there's no way that you could associate me with a Nazi. And so even though he claimed that there's no evidence,
The accusations are adding up. Yeah, they're piling up here.
I mean, a man flew out of the sky and called your name.
Called your
I'm
name.
also starting to like see like that parallel, the joke of just like, you fucking some girl that you don't like, you're not proud of in the streets, you know what I mean? And the homie's like, I saw you with that girl. I'm like, I wasn't with that girl. I don't be knowing that girl.
I wasn't with Rudolf Hess.
Like,
Fuck
yeah,
no.
I don't
fuck with that.
there's absolutely no physical evidence to tie me to
My
Rudolf
point
Hess.
is, if him and that dude were like meeting in public, like in secrecy, and then this dude crashes somewhere, and in public
Right.
he's like, "I want to speak to Hamilton," I want to talk to Samson.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
he might be like, "I don't know
who that guy is."
So
Because
I
you're
wanna-
right, like you couldn't be part of like the English Parliament and be like, "Hey, sorry guys, I gotta head out early. I got a meeting with a Nazi later today."
Yeah,
You're like, "Excuse me, you have a meeting with who?"
That could be.
So one of the theories here is that British intelligence convinced him with a fake letter to go meet the Duke of Hamilton.
They just baited him.
So this is where it gets interesting too.
Was this Hess guy? This Hess guy was like trying to stop the war with England. He was like not about the war with England. Like, what was his motivations? I mean, obviously we don't know like exactly why he went up there, but like, is there any evidence to say that he was like against the war?
He was essentially trying to get Britain to join them in an effort against Russia.
Okay, so
So it was
he
kind
just,
of an anti-communist thing. It
could-
was
he
like,
thought
I'm
he
going to
couldn't
go
kill-
to the enemy of my
Yeah.
enemy is my friend type shit.
I got
So he
you.
was going to go try to be like, yo, we're going to stop bombing you because they're bombing the shit out of him
Oh
currently.
yeah, they're bombing.
Like
fuck
the
out of
day
those
that this guy, like within minutes of this guy's flight crashing around 11 o'clock, there was a whole bombing raid going on in London. So, they're currently got their fucking storm boot on their fucking neck, and he flies to England and he's trying to talk to a Conservative Party member to be like, do you want to fight Russia?
Yeah.
So it makes some sense, like if that was really a plan.
Right. Just
A lot of these things
makes
make
some
sense, but I'm going to get a little wild here. Now,
Okay.
British intelligence and Aleister Crowley. It's hard to find real information on this story. I've only heard it talked about in some podcasts and things like that from people in Scotland. Like I follow a Scottish conspiracy podcast, and they went deep on this. I'll make sure the link's in the description if it's still up. Anyways, in that podcast, they were talking about how Aleister Crowley, right, a famous British like Luciferian Satanist, right? We'll pull up there's a picture of him that's like world famous. So this is a famous image of Aleister Crowley. Yeah. Okay. Now there are claims that he worked for British intelligence, MI5. Okay.
This dude's like Alex Jones of his time.
Well, he wrote like books and he was crazy. So the story goes that Aleister Crowley is the one who convinced Rudolf Hess to come to England and that they were going to do some dark occult ritual, spell slinging craziness. Now, I don't know the source, but on this podcast, they talk about stories where they said when Rudolf Hess landed, he was in full robes. Like occult ritual, full on, like wizard man, warlock robes. So if you land looking like Gandalf the Grey in the middle of a Scottish field to have a psychic demon battle with Aleister Crowley, and you're like, let me talk to the Duke of Hamilton, and they're like, who the what? Like, go directly to jail.
Yeah, do not
Son,
go.
if you don't want to get stabbed with this pitchfork, you get your ass in that
You're
barn.
gonna get in that barn that we're gonna turn into a Masonic lodge. So this
I'm so confused.
What are you confused about?
Well, so like he was gonna go meet with Aleister Crowley in full get up, but he's also gonna go meet with the Duke of Hamilton. Like you know what I mean? Like those sound like contradicting theories. Like why would he be going to link up with Aleister Crowley to do magic wizard shit, but then looking for the Duke of Hamilton?
Well, that's the thing is that there's a lot of different there's inaccuracies in the story. So there was no reporter on the ground that was like, what did he say when he landed? What was he wearing?
Yeah.
There's stories from a 10-year-old. There's stories from another guy who says that his father pulled the guy out of the wreckage. So there's conflicting stories. So there's no like, that's the kind of point here is there is no concrete, this is what happened. So we don't know for sure that he landed and said, I want to talk to the Duke of Hamilton. He could have landed and then gave a fake name and said he wants to talk to Aleister Crowley for all we know. Yeah. But the point being is that
He could have landed just been like, hey, Hitler.
Yeah. Who knows?
You fucking scum.
He could have even landed and been like, I want peace. I'm coming here as the lieutenant because I want to end the war. And then people can be like, shut the fuck up, we're in war. Like, you're not going to do that. So
You're bombing us.
That's why, like, we're on number 3. This is 10 conspiracies.
Oh, okay. So yeah, these are like different like theories of why Hess would be in this place.
So some people say it was he made the flight with Hitler's knowledge and was acting as his emissary. If Hitler was aware of his deputies' activities, then he took no steps to stop them. German authorities must have been aware of Hess's general activities at Augsburg to keep his flying practice secret from ground staff. Mechanics and other pilots would have been difficult because he was practicing to fly this plane. Like, this was really him that flew the plane. That, at least, we think is true. But Hess has been a keen aviator since the First World War. Hess himself is adamant that Hitler knew nothing of his intention. In his statements to the British, he says that he flew entirely on his own initiative. He also wrote to his adjutant, Karl Heinz Pinch, thanking him for remaining silent, and there is evidence from Albert Speer, who witnessed Hitler's uncontrollable rage upon hearing about Hess's flight. So this is the claim that Hitler had no idea that this dude flew up there, which is a little wild. Like, you would think Hitler would know that his homies like practicing fly, like, doing all this stuff, and then just takes off in the middle of the night. Like, that's
That's what it's starting to add up to me more. The more I think about this, the more my hypothesis is this dude was like, yo, this motherfucker on some other shit. I need to get the fuck
like
out
this
of here.
dude is clearly not going to win this war with
you
Russia.
Know what I mean? I need to figure out how to get on the winning side type shit.
Yeah.
Like, because it seems like, how did he crash? Like they said, he just ran out of fuel.
Well, he flew
so
for like 1,000 miles.
Right,
He
so it
flew
sounds
all the
like
way from,
somebody running.
Bavaria.
It doesn't sound like somebody with
Not
like
planning
a
on coming
plan
back.
or anything.
Yeah.
It sounds like a dude who was like, I'm going to just take this plane and beeline. Like, I get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? I'm about to fly 1,000 miles till I get into Britain, and I'm going to like beg them to like.
Maybe he shook the chicken bones.
Yeah.
And when he threw him on the ground,
Yeah.
it was like Hitler gonna die in a bunker like a bitch.
Yeah.
And he was like, time to scat.
Yeah, I gotta get going.
Time to get out of here. Yeah.
And that's why he's in full regalia, because he just like was
Yeah,
doing
he was
like,
doing his ritual shit. Was like,
oh shit,
Oh, shit, I gotta
I gotta go.
this is why this story is so interesting to me, because why did he just fly a plane all the way in the beginning, right before they attack Russia? He just flew a plane and crashed it in Scotland.
Right.
And what was he thinking was going to happen? They literally just put him in jail. So this is why I love this story. Now, this is that claim about the Luftwaffe's attack on London as a diversion. But here's the part that got me. Whilst this would have been an impressive diversion for Hess's flight and would substantiate the idea that Hitler had knowledge of the flight, official records indicate that there is no connection. Hess crossed the English coast 300 miles to the north of London at 10:23 and bailed out over Eaglesham at 11:09. So there was no air raid alert until 11:02, which is 39 minutes after he had already crossed the coast. So that kind of takes that out of that. This is a good one. It was not Hess, but an imposter. An imposter. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that the pilot who flew to Scotland on 10 May 1941 was truly Rudolf Hess. He was positively identified by Kirkpatrick, the Foreign Office expert on Germany, and while in Britain, Hess wrote to his family and friends on numerous occasions. His letters contained personal details which only he could have known, and his handwriting matched that of letters written by Hess pre-war. Apart from the true identity, there's also the overriding question of why any alleged double would accept life imprisonment without revealing their true identity. So this is where he was imprisoned.
Damn, that's a serious prison.
Yep.
Full-blown castle.
Yeah, he was at Spandau prison for essentially the entirety of his life until he died at 93. And then they ended up having to exhume him because neo-Nazis were coming there to celebrate him.
I wondered, so that's my thing. It's like this whole time that they had him, they never thought to ask him, like, there was no in-depth questioning going on.
Oh, there was. It was
I'm sure
just
they
all kept
interrogated
secret
the
within
shit
the
out
government.
of
Like
him.
there ain't no Patriot Act or nothing. Like there's you ain't gonna get no
Nobody
information.
They're
knows.
gonna come out and be like, all right, so this is what we found out from Hess today.
Yeah, no, that shit's major under wraps.
Yeah, I mean, I can come up with two theories. One is the runaway theory, and the other one is
What's he running from?
Hitler, though. Like we talked about in another podcast, they're just different. Like his inner circle wasn't all on the Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? Like there was some people that were like trying to undermine his attempts throughout the.
It was later on, like it was after he was involved in like a full-scale world war that like they tried to assassinate, like his inner circle tried to assassinate him. But this is early days. This is right before they attacked Russia, which they had a period.
They were kind of like up on the up.
Oh, they had a period of a few years where they were like really surging through Europe.
Because that's what's interesting about it is, like you said, this is the day before he makes his fatal step. Because like going into Russia,
is like
what people say is like that's what lost him the war. Essentially, was like deciding to make that move, and so it would make sense. And especially too with that, like that's why I think it's either he's running because he's so high up. So it's like you only have two options at that point: you're defecting, or you're like moving under the complete order of you're like.
Yeah, you're on a mission or you're AWOL.
Right?
Yeah.
There's no like ifs, ands, or buts. You don't get lost when you're that high up in the ranks.
You certainly don't fly planes yourself.
Yeah,
alone.
like on accident, right?
Yeah.
It's like so you're either like defecting or you're trying to accomplish some mission, which I could definitely see the mission being that. That's what I was saying. I could easily see it being like they're working some backdoor deal with Britain type thing, and he crashes because he doesn't quite know how to fly planes and shit like that, and didn't like know how to do.
No, he's a pilot.
He just ran out of fuel.
He ran out of gas.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, why wouldn't a pilot calculate that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to meet somebody, you know how much fuel you need to get to where you're going to meet this guy. Like, you don't just fall out of the sky because you ran. You know what I mean? That's somebody running.
No, and
definitely
like the
somebody
Duke of
running.
Hamilton, like I don't know for sure, but I don't think that's even in Scotland. So,
Right.
like,
Where was he going?
where was he going? Exactly. Like, like the idea that he was going to meet somebody, but then you crash land in some farm in the middle of Scotland, and it's like, Scotland's not even where the seat of the government is.
This is
Like,
the great mystery of
Like,
this
who
story.
exactly are you
Yeah.
trying to talk to?
I see it being like this. This is what I see it being. It's like some CIA agent. This Duke of Cheshire, Hamilton, whatever the fuck. This dude's high up in the CIA. Let's just hypothetically, I'm spinning a story, right? He's high up. He's working some backdoor deal. Like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes people would be doing these weird black ops, and his thing is like he's communicating with Hess, and he's like, yo, you should defect. Like he's trying to turn him as like a double agent type thing, like spy shit to me. And like you say, maybe he's sending him letters. He's like, yo, if you ever, want to come over here, like we got you, just get over here and I'll take care of you type shit. And then this dude's up against it. Maybe he finds out Hitler's gonna betray him or whatever, and he's like, fuck, I gotta get out of here. So he runs, and he's like, it's just like, like somebody who gave you their business card, and he's like, come find me. And so he's like flying, and he crashes. He's like, I'm looking for the, you just got in a plane crash too, so you're not like, you're like, the Duke of Hamilton, I need to speak to him ASAP. And they're like, nah, I don't know who the fuck you are.
Sure.
You're going to jail. And then he's out here, and he's like, the Duke of Hamilton. And Duke of Hamilton's like not supposed to be like interacting with, because like now people, if they don't know that you're trying to do the whole switch him, then it looks like you're working with him, and you can't just like publicly be working with this guy, type thing. So then that's when you have to like, I don't know nothing.
And that happens all the time.
It happens
like people
all the
think that
time.
like I remember when James Comey was getting questioned, and when he was like the head of the FBI because of the whole Clinton thing, and they were like, you weren't aware of this operation, and he was like, no, like I'm not aware of all the FBI operations. It's a national organization with hundreds of thousands of employees.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of everything that happens there. Like, you know what I mean? And so I think it's the same thing, like it's easy for like an MI5 guy to be like, him and his team, like I could see that, like if you're trying to make like a big play, like maybe you're up for like promotion or something, you're like, if I could turn this lieutenant in Hitler's circle, this could turn the tide of the war. I could be, and then he shows up and you're like, ooh, I didn't get a chance to tell everybody yet.
Like many of the guys have been sent on missions where it's like, you can never speak about this. This segue, are you pretty much wrapped in your whole thing? Is there any points you want to make? Because it does lead me into my guy. It leads me into my story a little bit.
We pretty much got the whole story.
Yeah. Because like it leads me into that, like people can sometimes send you on a mission and you can't talk about that mission in public. You know what I mean? Like,
that's a great segue.
You know what I mean? Like we're working on some shit on the backside, but like when it all comes out, like I will deny having ever known you or met you. Like we've never talked.
What did you see when you went there? I actually can't talk about it.
Right. So my guy is a guy that John had actually put me on to. Like I won't say my guy, it's my story, but it's about a guy as all of our other ones are. And it also happens to be in the time of like World War II era in the mid 1940s, right? So there's this dude, his name is Richard E. Byrd, right? And
Mr. Byrd.
Yeah,
Mr. Byrd.
Mr. Byrd. He's an admiral. He's like a high-ranking naval officer.
Very high-ranking.
He's doing I mean, he's up there. He's up there in the Navy, and he's doing exploratory missions essentially. Like his whole thing is he's like an explorer, which is cool because you have conquerors and war heroes and stuff, but then people don't know that the military would often have like Lewis and Clark type guys too, like where the government will send people out to explore different places and do exploratory missions. So my man's was that he's kind of like, he becomes famous for being like one of the first people to explore the North Pole and the South Pole by flight, right? Like he flies to both the North and South Pole. People say his North Pole flight is like, I guess there's some like debate.
Discrepancies.
Whether or not he actually flew to that. But he did lead many like expeditions to the Antarctic, right? And so this is his big thing. Like, I mean, at the time, nobody's been to the Antarctic really. Like it's like complete no man's land almost, and then he's kind of one of the first people to start doing like large scale exploratory missions to the Antarctic, and like the military sends him there. Like he's doing this with support from the military. So what's fascinating about Byrd is he goes down and he does these exploratory missions in the Antarctic, and he finds like really cool shit. Like he's like exploring, he's like setting up bases, he's like doing exploratory stuff, and he's like flying and doing like laps around the Antarctic and like looking to see what he sees, essentially like his whole gig. He does like 3 of these different missions, right? And he comes back and the people are questioning him essentially, and they're like, yo, what'd you find, and this and that, like what's going on? And he's like, yo, the Antarctic is like, it's popping, is essentially what he's saying. He's like, yo, there was a lot of like resources and things out there, and they're like, what kind of resources? And he's like, it's stuff, man. I can't really talk about. And you can see that
some stuff out there,
right? Yeah, and it's this interesting thing where it's like you would go out there and you would think that you'd be writing books and you would be like being the authority on like what's going on in Antarctica at the time. But he's like, in a weird way, kind of like dancing around the topic of like what he's seen and what has like been.
Like being very vague about his life mission.
Like, because I guess like people were kind of like silencing him, right? Like they were just kind of being like, yo, you should chill. Like he was saying things like, yo, I seen let me play this clip.
Yeah, before you play this clip too, to speak to like him doing multiple trips, one of the things I learned in my little Richard Byrd research was that he went on one of these trips, left some bread and some other food in the place where they had stayed, right, on their expedition. He leaves it for years, right, in the deep, deep cold. He comes back. They thaw out the bread, and he says it's as fresh as the day they baked it. And now this is said to have led to some of the freeze-dried kind of technology that came out of the 40s and 50s and 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Right.
Because he was just like, yeah, we came back, and it was frozen so quickly and so solidly that we were able to just thaw it and eat it.
Maintained its molecular composition.
Yeah.
There's a really good clip that you put me onto where it's like these guys kind of questioning him. It's like he's on like a radio show or something, like a TV show back in the 50s, and they're like, what kind of shit's out in Antarctica? And he's like, man, we froze bread. You never believe it. Stayed. And they're like, what? And he's like, what about this? And like he gets to talking about like they're like, he's like, yeah, it's really rich in resources and stuff. And he's like, yeah, there's like, coal and gold. I don't think he says
uranium.
gold, but he's like uranium, things like that. And they're like, there's uranium out there? He's like, I mean, I don't want to be the guy to be like, yo, it's.
I don't want to be the
like,
uranium guy.
Like, I don't want to be the guy who's like, hella. It is ironic that nuclear weapons come right on the back of this.
How does he know that there's any of these resources there if he's doing flyovers?
They have a plane that lands on the water, so they find some freshwater lakes, land. They go to the shore, so they do kind of like more than just fly. Like they fly and land, and then they fly again.
And I mean, they are out there for like 30 to 40 days or something, like 60 days. Like they're out there for a couple months, so they're doing
like a full-blown
tests
expedition.
And, like it's a full-blown expedition, right? It's
because
not
I was like, if he's just doing flyovers, how is he like? There's coal veins deep in the heart of Antarctica.
Well, that's what gets kind of interesting. Is like some of the things that he reports back of seeing is like he talks about how he saw land in places that had no ice, no nothing on them. Like they were like these like forests, like rich nature looking areas in the Antarctic. Like
he imagined that there were advanced civilizations living inside the planet.
Ideas of an occupied hollow Earth would be revisited nearly 2 centuries later in 1947 when famous polar explorer Admiral Richard Byrd flew reconnaissance missions over the North Pole.
Mr. Byrd.
Byrd allegedly reported in his private journal about a mysterious land beyond the North Pole, which he called the center of the great unknown.
That's what he called
Admiral Richard Byrd was able to fly to the North Pole and back and recorded flying over lush green areas where none should have been. And then 3 years later, he flew over the South Pole.
It's rumored that when Admiral Byrd's task force actually got to Antarctica, that one of the first things they discovered was an entrance into a hollow Earth civilization that was populated by very, very advanced beings.
Admiral Byrd made a lot of unusual statements, including talking about what he called a new kind of craft that could fly from pole to pole. And when Byrd got back to the United States, he was brought back to Washington where he was questioned very heavily about his statements. And allegedly he was told to stop talking about this.
Is it possible that entrances to another world can be found at the Earth's poles? And if so, did Admiral Byrd actually pass through
like
one of them?
Found Narnia, right? Some shit like that, yeah.
Theorists,
Some of this all comes from a disputed diary.
The other Earth.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of this comes from a disputed diary. Like the more fantastic claims, that's where like when he said he saw shit crafts that could fly from pole to pole, when he met the civilization, a lot of that all comes from one document, and it's pretty suspect. It doesn't seem like a legit document, but a lot of the stuff you were saying about the resource and stuff, completely fucking true. That's completely true. This hollow Earth could be true. He could have met some people there because they shut him the fuck up about it pretty quick. And he was originally looking for Nazis down there, like
That's another caveat to it. Well, I don't know if he was actually looking for Nazis or found them. Like, this is a interesting part of it. But around this same time, other people start getting involved in the Antarctic. You know, like they're hearing about him talking about it and stuff. And so he
resources, you say?
Yeah, right. Like I can't remember if he pulls up and he sees like the Nazis are out there working essentially, but like this is what the kind of overall implication of this becomes. Like I said before this, nobody's interested in Antarctica at all, but it's not until he comes out and he's like, yo, there's crazy shit down there that everybody's like, crazy shit. And this starts where
I thought it was just ice.
Yeah, this starts the whole Antarctic pack, which is like now I guess there's some like 40. I'm not gonna shit out bullshit. Like I'm gonna pull it up real quick.
Sovereignty over regions of Antarctica is claimed by 7 countries.
Right. So 7 different countries are being like, yo, we own Antarctic or portions of Antarctic. They created what's like a loose treaty of like they all kind of divvied it up. But Argentina, I think it's Argentina is the one that's like, Chile and Argentina, right? They're like, yo, it's our shit. Like, we're closest to this shit, essentially. They're like, that is our shit. And so they've been kind of leading the treaty. And essentially, like, they know they can't compete with everybody else. And nobody's fought for this piece of land yet. But they're all kind of working under this loose, like, it's everybody's. Like, you get a slice, you get a slice, you get a slice.
It's for science.
Yeah, right? Like,
I mean, Australia's got a big-ass slice.
Huge little chunk of, like, the whole gang. But so they've all, like, kind of Marie Byrd land. Interesting. It's unclaimed territory. It's ironic that it's Marie Byrd. Sounds like somebody naming something after their wife. But
what's that column? Go to the top of the territory.
Yeah, it's the name of the territory.
It's the name of the territory, which is also the place where he was saying that like rich resource like point land is like somewhere right in here. Oh, boom. Look, it was named after the wife of an American naval officer who explored the region. And so he was running like these, and that's where he claimed to see this like big earth. I wish I could find a clip of it. I don't remember what video I saw it in, because they show like clips, I guess, of like what this is supposed to look like or is or whatever.
But it's in that one.
But anyways, huge, because like I said, from here, like the Nazis do start like wide scale operations in Antarctic, and that's like something that's known. France at one point sends a ship down there to kind of like patrol and be like, yo, you can't come in here. And it starts this whole like heated battle for like, we should start investing in Antarctica and like thinking about what it might be. Yeah, it's a time in here somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can find it real quick.
Very, very interesting story. And like I said, still has wide-ranging implications because nobody still has formally claimed Antarctica. And if there are these crazy resources, it's like weird that we're not fighting over it. Like we fight over
we would totally
everything.
Fight over
you know
that,
what I mean? Like we fight over everything else, but it is like this weird thing. And
maybe it's because they peeked their head in the hollow earth and
right?
Giants met them and was like, stay
out.
your ass out there.
And
we were like, you got it, buddy.
Like we're turning, because there's an important point to make. It's kind of like that thing with Hess, right? Like this Byrd guy, he ain't no chump. He's not just like
he ain't just some fucking
dude.
private
This
dude.
Man is a Medal of Honor recipient.
He's an admiral. He is a like, high-ranking person in the Navy.
The highest medal that the military has to offer.
Medal of Honor, baby.
You know what I mean? So it's like not like this man's is like a schmuck, and there is this like alleged thing of like him being like, I can't talk about certain things like that I found in Antarctica. Yeah, this is it right here.
Yeah, this is it right here.
Yeah.
Would we like to check it out?
Play it.
The eye can see.
Oh, rewind a little bit. He talks about
dark rocks called nunataks appear above the ice. Then rugged mountain ranges as far as the eye can see. Bunger leans forward in amazement. His eyes have caught a sudden and unbelievable change in scenery. The universal white is turned to chocolate brown, dotted with blue. A cameraman goes into action. 300 square miles of land without snow. Land that might be in New Mexico or Arizona. Pictures alone will prove Bunger has discovered a warm oasis in the shadow of the pole. It is for such supreme moments as this that men brave the hardships of exploration. The astounding, undreamed-of fact is that they are over a chain of warm water lakes whose shores, except for small patches, are free of ice and snow. Commander Bunger circles the largest lake in sight, 5 miles long. He comes in to make a landing. Water temperatures must be recorded. Samples taken. He finds the water fresh, the temperature 38 degrees Fahrenheit. On the shores are vast deposits of coal and of minerals of the utmost importance to civilization. Aside from their headline discovery, Bunger and his men have another good reason for hustling home to the Currituck. A long-awaited ceremony is in progress. The whole fleet awaits news of the all-Western Beard Derby. Currituck skipper Captain Clark is judge. His salute of the day is...
I wish I could
right
grow a beard
corner
so bad.
mustache, twist.
They're like, hey, good job.
That's funny.
That's funny. What else are you gonna do out in the Antarctic?
Yeah, you're gonna grow your beard out.
You're definitely growing your beard.
Oh,
You
yeah, you don't
want
want a cold face.
You know, like dead ass.
Yeah, I guess the weird part, like I understand the idea of like, oh, there's like geothermal heated lakes at the pole, at the South Pole or something like that. Like, okay, that makes sense. Like, I know about geotherm, like, I don't know about it, but like I've heard of the idea of geothermals and like how magma can heat up areas when it gets close to the surface, but it's not actually coming out
too,
of.
you know?
It's a continent, so it's probably got underground volcanoes and shit,
and
active.
overground volcanoes.
And overground volcanoes, probably. I mean, that's how land is made.
So yeah, he found one. Richard Byrd he named one.
Oh, okay.
Mount Sydney or something like that. Yeah.
You know, I think that's not crazy, and we know that like volcanic deposits have lots of minerals in them, so that's also not crazy. Like, that wouldn't be a wild thing to. But the weird thing is that nobody's there, and like the question is like, is nobody there because like it's just too cold to mine, or like, you know what I mean? Like, now we're just kind of arguing about whether or not there's something else there other than the minerals and the lakes and shit that keeps people from being there. Yeah.
Or are people there, but it's just one of these like big like secret things where it's like the governments and the treaties and the scientists, they kind of, you know, it wouldn't be the hardest conspiracy to be like, yeah, we're mining in Antarctica, but only a select few people know.
I just got it. You remember in that movie 2012 when they make that big, everybody thinks it's a spaceship, but it's actually that Ark. You remember, it's a big ship to float on, and it's for like all the rich people and shit.
Yeah, they use that concept in a couple movies.
I mean, it's the Ark, like Noah and the Ark. But if you think about like the floating city, like where the rich people will escape to get away from all the squalor and all the pollution on Earth or whatever, like a space station, like. Space and all of that shit started right after this era, you know, like when, like right in the Cold War is when Sputnik happened, and then the whole space race, and then everybody was like, we're getting into space. What if it was all like, what if like Admiral Byrd discovered this giant resource deposit,
and they were like, technology.
They were like, here, don't tell anybody about these resources. We're gonna hold on to these so that we can build our rich person space station for all the elites, and then, you know, we'll use all the resources there to build it, and we'll use the resources there to fuel the people when they live there.
I wouldn't be against that theory, low key, because it is interesting timing that these things go down. You know, like I said, the Nazis were heavily invested because they were looking for ways to fuel their war machine, you know, without depending on other people. So they started doing explorations down there to see what these resources are. I think this is my personal thing from having done some of this research and stuff, and knowing that the Nazis were heavily invested in it, and him not being able to talk about certain things, and like them tampering a lot of this stuff, probably because he was saying some crazy stuff. I want to make this caveat: the man's was probably a little crazy. Okay,
he was saying some wild shit.
Multiple trips to Antarctica.
Right, it's gonna do
Scrambles
something
your brain.
to a man's like.
Well, you're
psyche.
right there. I mean, imagine how long he must have spent at that high level of gravitational energy. You know, like the gravitational field.
Shit, yeah.
Like, we don't know. Like, there's a ton of stuff about all of that we don't understand and how it affects us. So, like, who knows? Like, maybe sitting at the pole for too long just fucks with your brain.
You know what I mean? And, like, you start seeing things zipping through the sky or something. You know, like, you're just looking at white for as far as the eye can see for, like, days on end. You might start seeing some things. And people being like, you know, people who are trying to help you within the organization be like, hey, man.
Hey.
You know, like, maybe you want to, like, mention that part.
I'm completely not against the idea that it could be another race of beings. And almost primarily because of the Tic Tac story that came out in the last few years. Commander Favor was like, yeah, I seen this Tic Tac. It was doing these things that it could not do. It was moving in such a way that it couldn't really do that, and then it went underwater. So it's like, of course, you would have a white Tic Tac spacecraft in Antarctica, dummy.
Right.
And of course, that would explain the whole fly pole to pole thing.
Right.
Because how would you fly pole to pole in a weird craft? It would be in a weird little white Tic Tac thing.
Yeah.
It would make sense.
And you gotta believe too, like just assuming like aliens were doing reconnaissance on our planet or something, or trying to see what's going on.
It's a good base.
You know what I mean? Like, where else are you gonna do it? Like, where else are you gonna do it? Like, go to the one remote place where there's not a lot of like activity that you can, in the shadows, launch your little reconnaissance missions and hide back in the poles. I'm not saying that's out of reach.
What if he found a portal though?
Well, that's what they were saying too. It's like he talks about in his like own like being like, I seen some like holes to the underground.
Well,
because
he was saying like, I think, you know, he was talking about like, oh, I saw these crafts that could travel pole to pole, but maybe when he was talking through the middle instead of around the outside.
Sheesh.
In his you were talking about the interview he did. It looks like a radio interview. It's actually for like a watch company. It's like Chronoscope television series or something. And he's sitting there and he's talking for about 10 or 15 minutes. But when he's doing it, he's running his finger around this little dish on the table. And that's what flat earthers point to say that he's trying to hint at the ice wall and that this is a flat earth thing. Yeah. So there's a lot of little intricacies.
There's a lot of weird layers to the Byrd story. And like I said, it has far-reaching implications through World War through to now. Like, I mean, you see he has a territory named after him. And his wife. Like that thing. He even in that documentary type thing where they talk about it, they said coal and other resources that would be beneficial to human civilization. And again, when he talks in that little interview, he goes like coal, uranium, and they were like, uranium? And he was like, I mean, you know, there's some uranium.
Yeah, he
like
definitely
you could tell like
downplays
he
it.
wasn't one. He didn't want to be like, oh, there's piles and piles. Like, you need nukes. Oh, there's a hell of nuke shit down there.
They're already refined. You know, just pick them up and plug them into your reactor.
I would like to figure this out on this podcast. We have to piece these two things together. But when does he go? Like his Antarctic explorations?
1947, I think, was the Operation High Jump. That was the major one.
Okay, yeah, he did 3 different ones.
46 to 47 was High Jump.
Okay, and 28 to 30 would be the first. When is the nuclear like weapon come about?
It'd be the Manhattan Project, which was completed in like 1943, 1944.
And it was a theory that we were racing Germany to the completion of this. Huh?
You're in videos.
Right. We were racing Germany to the completion of this project, correct?
1946 is when it...
42 to 46.
Is when it started in 42 to 46. Richard Byrd goes 28-30. So his first exploration is quite far. Antarctic Service Expedition is 39-40 though.
Well, you have to imagine, like, it takes them a while to, like, the Project Manhattan, like, the atomic bomb is built upon other technologies, you know? So, like, all of the other stuff had to be developed, and then they brought it all together in the Manhattan Project. So the timeline's not really off. Like, if he's like, yo, I found a huge deposit of nuclear stuff. Didn't you say that you had a homie doing some interesting stuff with bombs and nuclear material? And he was like, yeah, we do actually. You know, let me get on the phone with him and let me hit, you know, like, it's just like a drug deal. Like, hey, I found some bomb shit. We should make something out of it.
To the point where this 39-40 expedition is the first one financed by the U.S. government. So the first two were financed by like organizations and things like that, right? Like, I think this first one was, I don't know who was funding. I think it was like some company. It's like a company that was like funding the first couple of the expeditions.
I want to talk about this high jump one because I just noticed something I'd never noticed before.
46, 47.
So in 1945, he's present at the surrender of the Japanese. All right. Then he's released from active duty. A year later, he's appointed to this expedition of 7,000 troops to the south, to the Antarctic. That's crazy. So they were like, gave him all these awards. He did great during World War II. He did a wonderful job. All right, sir, have a good life. And then a year later, like, by the way, we're going to enlist you as the main officer on an Antarctic expedition where we're going to give you 7,000 troops. That's kind of crazy.
Excuse me?
Yeah, like he got released from that, so nobody else was probably able to do this stuff.
That's crazy.
Like, he was the guy.
Yeah.
The Antarctic guy.
He became like the one that we go to when we need to. He was interviewed by International News Service, right? This is following. The interview appeared March 5th, 1947. This is interesting. He says, Byrd warned today that the United States should adopt measures of protection against the possibility of an invasion of the country by hostile planes coming from the polar regions. The Admiral explained that he was not trying to scare anyone, but the cruel reality is that in case of a new war, the United States could be attacked by planes flying over one of the both poles. The statement was made as part of a recapitulation of his own polar experience in an exclusive interview with the International News Service, talking about the recently completed expedition. Byrd said that the most important result of his observations and discoveries is the potential effect that they have in relation to the security of the United States. The fantastic speed with which the world is shrinking, recalled the Admiral, is one of the most important lessons learned during his recent exploration. I have to warn my compatriots that the time has ended when we were able to take refuge in our isolation and rely on the certainty that the distances, the oceans, and the poles were a guarantee of safety. And I think that that's a
warning right there.
It is. And I think he's kind of like looking at like, yo, it's been easy for me to get back and forth from this Antarctica shit. Like, don't underestimate our other people in the world can get down here and come up here from there, and you might not be ready for that type shit. Like it's easier
Hit
than
you on that flank.
Yeah, like it's easier than you think it is. But that's a interesting warning, and you could see why people were probably like, yo, chill, dog, like don't, like you say, he's like, I'm not trying to scare nobody, and they're like, but you are though, like you should chill, you know.
Yeah, you're telling them there's tons of resources, you're telling them that other countries could go there and then attack us from there, which means that they would control those resources,
and you might as well be
just
saying
shut your
aliens
goddamn
are real,
mouth.
Yeah,
Like
people can't fathom Antarctica.
We told you to go down there and tell us if you found Nazis. Nobody said go blip blab to the news. Who the fuck told you to go on the International News Service? You goddamn hippie.
That's why the only time. That's why the only quote they have after the expedition is from a Chilean newspaper.
Yeah.
Because by the time his ass got back to America, they were like, "Hey,
you better
shut the fuck up."
The gag order came in.
Because like he said, he appeared on that television show. Those are about the only ones. Like that documentary, that interview with the International News, and then this Long Island.
You're not gonna find much else of Admiral Byrd talking about
his expeditions. Which, if you're the guy, like in today's world, if you're like the leading edge of anything, you're on podcasts. People want to talk to you. People want to know what you know. Here's a man who's not really. It's just, I don't know, man. It'll be fascinating to find out what be going on down there, because that's one of the questions that I have, you know.
I love this point. I didn't know this. In 1948 is when the U.S. Navy made The Secret Land, which is what we watched a clip from. And it was Navy produced. And it shows live action footage along with a few reenacted scenes, and it won the Academy Award for Best Documentary.
Wow.
That's big. I didn't know that.
I did not know that.
I knew that there was reenacted scenes in there because I've watched it, and you can kind of tell that there are some, like in part of that plane shot, they're like, oh, look, he's got the camera. And it's like,
you know, he's clearly not in a plane.
If you look into that story, like they had to like throw stuff over the side because they were too heavy. And
it wasn't like easy like that for them to just be cruising and be like, look,
we're just.
But it's also weird that the Navy would produce the documentary. Like, it almost feels propaganda.
That's how it was all through World War I, World War II. Like, I don't know when the movies really switched over, but in World War II, if you made a documentary about a naval operation, it's going to be done by the Navy.
Maybe.
Think about it from the, you know, if you think about it from the stance, like, these people who are doing this propaganda are, like, very smart, and they know what they're doing, you know? So it wouldn't surprise me. It's just like that thing that Jordan Peterson talks about that I posted in my stories a few days back, where he's like, if I'm a sophisticated person or a government or whatever, I'm going to encroach on you or on your rights all the way up until you start protesting about it, and then I'm going to stop. But I'm not going to go back. I'm going to wait there, and I'm going to let you become comfortable with me being at that point, and then I'm going to encroach a little bit more until you protest, and then I'm going to stop. I'm going to wait, and I'm not going to go back. I'm going to let you get comfortable again. Damn. And so I can see them doing that maneuver along with a little bit of, like, feeding you, like, kind of like the same thing when they came out and were like, yeah, UFOs are real. And everybody's like, look, the government said that aliens are real. And I was like, that's not what they said. They just said that there's things flying in the sky that they don't know what it is. And I was like, that's not the same thing as saying aliens. But it's just a little tiny little bit of, hey, here's a cool documentary about you remember Admiral Byrd was saying all those crazy things about, right? Well, we made a documentary to explain all of those things that he was telling you.
You're like,
and then you watch the little video and you're like, oh, they found hot lakes. oh, cool. And then, because when you're not thinking like, what do they do with all that coal? Especially back then in the 40s and shit, the country still very much believed in their government and like the elites were giving them like a non-bullshit story.
I definitely think that there's something going down, whether it be Hollow Earth, whether it be like the whole.
There's definitely something going down.
A collection of resources and minerals that makes total sense to me. If the poles are magnetic, as they say that they are, right? I could see them yanking iron and things like through the soil all the way over millennia. You know, like thousands and thousands of years. They could probably.
That's how Tony Stark thing works. Kept the shrapnel out of his heart by using magnets.
Right, yeah, to like keep it, from like penetrating any further. So my point is, I could see that being like a very rich, dense area, and like I said, I find it no coincidence that the major players of World War II were both involved in that place, and to this day, it's contested, man.
Well, that's a good layer there. It's kind of to this day, like, why don't we hear about mineral-rich Antarctica? Probably because they don't want us to be talking about.
People don't want to be knowing what's going on down there.
Like it's one of those things that like we have shows about river monsters and we have shows about like everything, ice road truckers, whatever, man. We can survive in sub-zero temperatures as a race of people now. We have advanced.
They're streaming live from space.
Yeah, exactly. We're in space.
Internet in space.
They're internet. It's on the space station. They're like, hey, doing fucking telephone.
So why can't we go to Antarctica? Why isn't someone streaming from Antarctica? Why isn't someone doing a mission to Antarctica like constantly?
Because it's already been proven it's not just like an empty, vast snow.
No, it's a giant continent.
Like I read somewhere that shit can get up to like 60 degrees out there in Antarctica in some places at certain times. So it's not like this completely inhospitable like area. So you put me on to the Admiral Byrd story. Like I was listening to him explain that to Mac, and then I went down. I was like, "What are you talking?" And that sent me down a rabbit hole of like, "What the fuck is going on in Antarctica?" Like whole scenario. So I wanted to bring that to you guys, so maybe you could fall down that little rabbit hole.
We got
too,
time travel. We got spell slinging wizards.
Yeah.
We got hollow Earth aliens. We've got everything you could want in this.
And
episode.
I love it because it's history though too.
It's real history.
You know what I mean? Like
it's all real
the
shit.
Other side, that conspiracy angle, like I don't know, but the history itself is weird.
Yeah,
like it's weird. The man's life here is interesting life. That dude, like there's some interesting shit that's happening out here sometimes in everyday life, and it has.
And I would like to point out, I think that there's, because of how close it is in relation to modern times, I think that people discredit how absolutely ridiculous the 20th century was. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like people don't give, like, academics, like, when I hear, like, historians talk about it, like, historians, for the most part, whether or not they study that specific time of history, but every historian I've ever heard talk about the 20th century talks about it as if it's, like, pretty much the most important time that we've ever gone through as human beings, like, the most influential. I mean, 3 of the biggest world events that had ever happened in the 20th century. So it's like, I think that there was so much going on, and that gives rise to all of these strange stories from that time period, because it was just, there was some weird energy in that century. Like
massive,
there was just something
massive
going
cultural
on.
shifts, massive industrial and economic shifts, like massive loss of life. I mean, it's estimated 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. Like we're talking like the 20th century was insane on scale of leaps and bounds.
See, so now I'm really inspired, because this is probably something that we're gonna do as like a series. Like I'm very inspired to go to a different century now, because like
bring it back to Inca.
You know what I mean? Like there was some like it's tougher to get these types of anecdotal stories, like I think the more, like if I wanted to go back to Egyptian times, it's going to be hard for me to dig up stories of just some interesting servant. Like it's mostly Cleopatra and like the big names, but there's a lot of them out there of like stories of these crazy people that existed. I think ancient tech was like that too, of like hearing some of these things that existed in the millennia. But I still have that hard time when I'm thinking about time as like a continuum. I'm always like, where am I at in the continuum of time? Like, what does my generation look like? Not that this whole century is my generation, but my century. What does that look like as compared to like the 1100s, you know, and like you said, like the fucking before that, the BCs, you know,
Ooh,
like
yeah, let's go back to Göbekli Tepe, baby.
Like, yeah, there was some really strange stories. So, you guys, if you got some kind of suggestions of like, yo, talk about this time period or whatever, like we'd love to hear some stories from this time period. Or
please send me down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I would love to.
Please send me down. I will go down whatever, you know.
I'll
go down
there.
most rabbit holes.
I'll go there.
Not all of them.
I'll at least open the door and take a peek.
Yeah, I'll peek.
You know,
Yeah,
if it
peek
calls
in.
to me,
Yeah.
you know, it's got to be kind of like the Matrix, you know, it's like I might pick that pill sometimes and go down that way, you know, if it's interesting. Like I said, that Byrd shit, I still can't get over it. I'm still deep in it. You know, it's scary.
We'll just have to go to Antarctica and find out for ourselves.
And you already know I'm about to do some heavy research on the old Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Like I'm so interested in that now too, of just like, what the fuck was going on here? You know? Hess too, man. I don't know about that guy. All right, man. We appreciate your time, and we'll see you guys again next time.
Yeah.
Peace.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber,